The galaxy was at peace, or at least that's what the Galactic Council liked to believe. For hundreds of years, the great species of the stars had ruled through agreements, trade, and threats. Entire civilizations obeyed the Council's commands because they feared its fleets. No one dared to say no. No one except a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary star. At first, Earth was nothing more than a curiosity. Its people were known as ambitious and restless. They built ships faster than anyone expected, sent explorers into deep space, and opened trade routes with nearby colonies. But when the Council tried to control them, when they demanded humanity give up its independence, Earth's answer shocked everyone. The Council demanded Earth join their alliance, pay heavy taxes, and hand over part of its military technology. Most worlds would have obeyed instantly, but Earth refused. Their reply was calm, simple, and final. "We are not under your rule." That single sentence rippled through the galaxy. No one had ever spoken to the Council that way. Within hours, hundreds of transmissions spread across the stars, news networks, traders, diplomats, all repeating the same words. Earth defies the Galactic Council. The alien species who ruled the Council chamber saw it as an insult they couldn't ignore. To them, humans were still newcomers, young, reckless, and emotional. The elders of the galaxy laughed at humanity's arrogance. They believed this Earth didn't understand how things worked in the greater order of the stars. But not everyone laughed. A few observers had studied the humans carefully. They had watched their history, their endless wars, their unbreakable will, their strange ability to turn weakness into power. They whispered warnings to the Council. Do not provoke them. They have something inside them that others don't. The Council ignored those voices. Soon after, the official declaration was made. The Galactic Council announced that Earth was now an enemy state. They called it a limited enforcement operation. But everyone knew what it really meant: war. The decision was made in a shining chamber of gold and glass, filled with hundreds of alien delegates. The Supreme Chancellor, a tall figure with crystal-like skin, raised his voice for all to hear. "Humanity," he said, "has refused peace and order. Therefore, we must bring them into harmony through force." Applause filled the hall, but behind those cheers was arrogance. The Council didn't see this as a risk. They saw it as a routine cleanup. After all, they had faced rebellious planets before. To them, Earth was small and fragile. Its population was barely 10 billion, and its ships were old compared to the sleek cruisers of the Council Armada. When the declaration reached Earth, the reaction was strange. There was no panic, no grand speech, no threat of revenge. The human government simply ended all communication with the outside galaxy. Their ships returned home. Their colonies stopped answering messages. Their trade networks shut down. To the galaxy, it looked like fear. But to those watching closely, the silence was unnerving. Humanity had gone quiet, not because they were scared, but because they were preparing. For the first time in centuries, the skies above Earth darkened, not from war but from activity. Fleets that had been resting in orbit began to move. Shipyards reactivated. Factories that had been silent for decades started working around the clock. Every signal coming from the solar system became encrypted. No one could tell what they were building or why. Across the colonies near the edge of human space, something else happened. Civilian transports disappeared from trade routes. Mining stations powered down. Communication relays went offline one by one. It was as if humanity was wrapping itself in a cloak of shadows. The Galactic Council took it as a sign of surrender. They believed Earth was cutting itself off because it had accepted defeat. They were wrong. The truth was simple. Humans had stopped talking because they no longer needed to. They understood something the rest of the galaxy didn't. The first rule of survival is silence. For weeks, the Council debated how to handle the situation. Some suggested diplomacy. Others wanted to destroy Earth immediately. In the end, the military faction won. The Council agreed to send an expeditionary fleet to the solar system to restore order. The fleet was enormous, over 100 ships from 15 different species. Each vessel carried advanced weapons, energy shields, and planetary assault units. They called themselves the 9th Expeditionary Force. When the fleet launched, the entire galaxy watched. Newspapers called it the Short War. Diplomats predicted victory within a week. Traders placed bets on how quickly Earth would surrender. Even the soldiers aboard those ships were relaxed. joking about who would get to plant the Council's flag over Earth first. But far away in the dark corners of deep space, a few veterans who had studied human history whispered a single sentence that spread like a ghost through the ranks. Never underestimate a human who feels cornered. The fleet reached the edge of the solar system without resistance. The commander ordered long-range scans, expecting to detect fleets of human ships or at least defensive satellites. Instead, the sensors showed nothing but empty space, no warships, no communication beacons, no signs of life, the commander laughed. They've run away, he said, confident. This will be easier than expected. But one of his officers frowned at the readings. Something was wrong. The background radiation across the system was uneven. The magnetic fields were fluctuating in strange ways, as if something massive was moving, but invisible to sensors. The officer tried to report it, but before he could, the commander silenced him. False alarms, he said. Focus on the mission. The fleet advanced. One by one, their ships entered deeper into the system, past Neptune, past Uranus, past the cold moons of Saturn. Still nothing. No human ships. No defenses. It looked like the solar system was abandoned. Then, as the fleet approached Jupiter, the first ship vanished. No explosion, no distress signal. It simply disappeared from every radar screen. The commander demanded answers. The sensors found nothing. A second ship vanished minutes later, then a third. Panic began to spread through the fleet. The commander shouted for everyone to regroup, but the communication channels filled with static. The officers tried to scan again, but their instruments froze, and then, from the darkness beyond Neptune, something appeared. At first, it looked like a shadow, a distortion in space. Then the distortion grew larger, forming edges, lights, and a faint metallic shape. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't debris. It was a ship. No one in the Council fleet had ever seen a vessel that size. It was colossal, larger than a moon with armor that absorbed all light. Its surface seemed alive, shifting slightly as if it was built from millions of connected layers. The fleet tried to contact it. No response. They sent warning signals. Still nothing. The commander ordered all ships to arm their weapons. Then the human ship sent a single transmission. One short message, translated into perfect galactic standard. Congratulations. You just declared war on the galaxy's most lethal species. Every sound in the fleet stopped. No one spoke. The message repeated once, then again before cutting off. The Council commander gave the order to fire, but it was too late. The human dreadnought moved faster than anything they had ever recorded. Energy waves rippled across its hull. Light bent around it. Within seconds, beams of silent blue light tore through space. The entire Ninth Fleet vanished from the scanners. No explosion. No debris, nothing, just silence. The galaxy never received a distress call. All contact with the Ninth Expeditionary Force ended that day. The only thing anyone ever heard was that strange message, repeating through the static across the communication channels. Congratulations. You just declared war on the galaxy's most lethal species. After that, the stars grew quiet. Every world that once mocked Earth went silent. Trade routes near human space closed. Scouts and explorers began reporting strange disappearances near the solar frontier. The Council tried to deny it publicly, but behind closed doors, fear spread through every government chamber. No one dared to send another fleet. No one dared to approach Earth again, because deep down they all knew one thing. They hadn't discovered humanity's weakness. They had awakened its strength. After the destruction of the Council's Ninth Fleet, the galaxy changed overnight. At first, the Council tried to cover it up. They told the public that communication with the fleet had been temporarily lost due to interference in deep space. But no one believed that. The fleet had the best technology in the galaxy. It didn't just vanish. Rumors began to spread through every colony, every trade station, every shipyard. Some said the humans had destroyed the fleet in seconds. Others claimed the fleet had seen something so terrifying that they destroyed themselves. No one knew the truth, but one thing was clear. Something powerful had awakened in human space. For the first time in centuries, the Council felt fear. Meetings went on for weeks inside the shining halls of the Galactic Council. Leaders shouted, argued, and blamed one another. The Chancellor demanded calm. "It's just one battle," he said, trying to sound confident. "We will regroup, rebuild, and send a stronger fleet." But his voice trembled, because deep down, everyone in that chamber knew something was wrong. Humanity hadn't just fought back, they had done something the galaxy thought impossible. They had erased an entire fleet without leaving a trace. That kind of precision, that kind of power wasn't something a young species should have. And then came the silence. All signals from the solar system stopped completely. No communication, no trading signals, not even background transmissions from their satellites. The humans had cut themselves off from the galaxy as if they had vanished behind an invisible wall. Explorers who tried to approach human space never returned. Patrol ships sent to investigate went missing. The borders around Earth became known as the Silent Zone. At first, the Council thought Earth had gone into hiding. But those who understood humanity better knew that wasn't the case. Humanity didn't hide. Humanity prepared. On Earth, the mood was not one of panic, it was of purpose. The cities worked in perfect rhythm. Lights filled the skies at night as shipyards glowed with activity. Massive construction rings formed in orbit, building something beyond imagination. No one outside knew what these structures were, but every piece was built with focus and speed. Factories that had once made simple goods now built engines and armor plating. Energy reactors were turned into power cores for new ships. Every scientist, engineer, and worker knew the same truth. The galaxy had declared war on them, and they were not going to lose. Even the smallest child on Earth could feel it, the calm before something huge. The planet had gone quiet not because of fear, but because humanity had learned the value of silence. Words weren't needed anymore. Everyone understood their role. Everyone worked. In deep underground facilities, the old war networks reactivated. The systems that had been sleeping for decades were brought back online. Defense platforms were calibrated, and strange signals were sent into the void. What those signals said, no one outside the planet could decode. A few human colonies far from the solar system also disappeared from communication maps. But they weren't destroyed. They had gone dark voluntarily, linking themselves to Earth's secret network. The humans had built something hidden, something that operated in silence. Weeks turned into months. The galaxy waited for the next move, but nothing happened. The Council's ships hovered far from the border, afraid to go closer. Traders avoided human sectors completely. It was as if the entire solar system had been swallowed by a ghost. Then quietly, human ships began to reappear. They weren't the same ships the Council had seen before. These new vessels were darker, sleeker, and almost silent. Their hulls didn't reflect light. Their engines left no trails. They appeared on scanners for seconds, then vanished again. No one could trace them. At first, the galaxy thought they were probes. But one by one, these ships began showing up near Council supply routes. They didn't attack. They just watched. And when enemy scouts tried to follow them, they never came back. Across the stars, an old saying returned to life. When the humans go silent, something is coming. The Council finally decided to act. They formed a new investigation team, made up of scientists, military officers, and spies. Their mission was simple: find out what humanity was doing in the dark. They sent in unmanned drones toward Earth's border, equipped with high-grade sensors. Only one of those drones ever returned. The data it carried shocked everyone. The images showed hundreds, no, thousands, of enormous structures in space. Massive stations orbiting the outer planets, each surrounded by fleets of unknown design. The heat signatures were too high for civilian ships. These were war machines. Huge, advanced, and built for something far greater than defense. When the Council analyzed the readings, they realized the power levels were beyond anything they had ever seen. The energy cores could power entire planets. It was as if humanity had re-engineered the laws of physics in a few short months. One Council member whispered, "This isn't just preparation. They're building something." And he was right. In the darkness of deep space, humans were building a force so vast and so quiet that the galaxy didn't know whether to fear or admire them. Every blueprint, every weapon, every ship was made with one goal: to make sure no one could ever threaten them again. Inside the Council, panic grew. Some demanded that another fleet be sent immediately, to strike before it was too late. Others begged for peace, suggesting a new treaty with Earth. But the pride of the Council wouldn't allow it. They refused to admit their mistake. While the galaxy argued, humanity continued its silent work. There were no speeches, no heroic songs, no banners, just the hum of machines and the quiet determination of people who refused to be conquered. The world that once loved to talk, to argue, and to debate had learned the power of silence. Months passed. Then something strange began happening across the outer colonies of the Council. Supply stations stopped responding. Mining fleets disappeared. Entire moons went dark. When rescue teams arrived, they found nothing. No wreckage, no signs of struggle, just emptiness. The few signals they managed to capture were faint and distorted, but they all carried the same short message, always ending the same way. They're watching us. The Council grew desperate. They increased patrols, strengthened defenses, and tried to calm their citizens. But it was useless. Fear had spread faster than truth. Even the bravest captains refused to travel near human space. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the solar system, Earth's skies were alive with light. Enormous ships drifted through orbit, testing engines that glowed like miniature suns. Their hulls bore no markings, no flags, nothing to identify them. To anyone watching, they looked like shadows wrapped in fire. But the humans didn't speak about war openly. They didn't send messages of revenge. They didn't make threats. Their silence became their greatest weapon. It made the galaxy imagine the worst. In the quiet of the night, deep inside one of the command stations orbiting Earth, a small group of humans watched a holographic display showing the positions of Council fleets. They didn't cheer. They didn't gloat. One of them simply said, "They still think we're afraid." Another replied softly, "Good. Let them think that. Fear will make them move slower." That was humanity's new strategy. Patience. They didn't need to strike immediately. They knew time was their ally. The Council's fear would do half the work for them. Every month that passed made the Council weaker, more divided, and more paranoid. And as the galaxy argued and trembled, humanity perfected its silence. When traders whispered stories of human ghost ships appearing near the edges of known space, most people dismissed them as myths. But the old captains, the ones who had lived long enough to remember humanity's wars, believed. They knew the truth. Humans were never the loudest ones before a battle. They were the quietest, and when the silence finally broke, it would not be a warning. It would be a storm. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The galaxy had been waiting in silence for almost a year since the humans stopped speaking. Many believed the threat was over. The Council said the humans had learned their lesson and would never fight again. But deep inside, everyone knew that wasn't true. The silence wasn't peace. It was something else. The Galactic Council finally decided to break it. They formed a massive new military group, a fleet made up of ships from almost every major species. It was called the First Contact Fleet. The Council said their goal was simple: enter human space peacefully, make contact, and prove that the galaxy still held control. But everyone knew what it really was. It was an invasion in disguise. The fleet was made of more than 500 ships. There were huge battleships with thick armor, sleek scout ships, carriers full of drones, and destroyers that could burn cities from orbit. The commanders were confident. They believed they were about to make history by showing that the Council still ruled the stars. The fleet moved carefully through the border that separated human space from the rest of the galaxy. The moment they crossed that invisible line, everyone felt it. The stars seemed dimmer. The silence in the comms became heavier. No background radio noise, no civilian traffic, not even the faint signals of trading stations. It felt like they had entered a graveyard. For the first few days, they saw nothing but empty space. The planets they passed had no life signs. Moons that once had colonies were now cold and dark. It was as if the humans had erased their own presence. One commander joked nervously, "Maybe they all went extinct." No one laughed. On the fourth day, one of the scout ships picked up something strange beyond the orbit of Neptune. It looked like a signal, and faint, broken, repeating. The fleet changed direction and moved toward it. As they got closer, the signal grew stronger. It was definitely artificial. The technicians tried to decode it, but the language was strange, mixed with layers of encryption. Then suddenly, it switched to Galactic Standard. It was a single sentence played over and over again. "Turn back." The commanders ignored it. They believed it was just an automated warning. The fleet advanced deeper into the solar system, But then sensors began to show readings they couldn't explain. There was movement, large energy sources all around them, but the ships couldn't detect their exact positions. It was like something was there, hidden in the dark, watching. The fleet spread out to scan the area. Every scanner, every radar pulse came back with static. The silence became unbearable. Some of the crew began to whisper that the humans were there, hiding somewhere among the planets. Then, one by one, the lights on the outer ships started to flicker. It wasn't power failure. Something was jamming them. The commanders ordered the fleet to regroup and activate their shields. That's when the first ship vanished. No explosion, no distress call. It was just gone. Its signal disappeared from every radar screen. Seconds later, another ship vanished. Then another. Panic filled the communication channels. The commanders tried to calm their crews, but no one was listening. Suddenly, the darkness around them shifted. Something enormous began to move behind the planet Neptune. It was so large that at first they thought it was a moon. But then it turned. A shape emerged from the shadows. Smooth, black, and terrifyingly silent. It wasn't a planet, and it wasn't any known type of ship. It was a fortress. A giant machine made of layered metal that seemed to swallow light. When the fleet tried to scan it, every system crashed. Then, out of nowhere, a voice came through the communication line. It was calm, cold, and completely human. "Congratulations," it said. "You just declared war on the galaxy's most lethal species." The message repeated twice. Every crew member froze, and then light erupted from the giant structure. It wasn't a blast of fire or plasma. It was something else, a pulse of pure energy that spread silently through space. It passed through the fleet like a wave. Ships that were hit didn't explode, they just stopped working. Engines shut down, weapons powered off, and even life support systems went quiet. In less than 5 minutes, the entire first contact fleet was helpless. Inside the command ship, the officers shouted and tried to restart the systems, but nothing responded. Their controls were dead. Outside their windows, they saw the human fortress move closer. Its surface shifted like living metal, and thousands of smaller ships detached from its hull. They were human ships, small, fast, and built for battle. Each one moved with perfect coordination, surrounding the frozen fleet. One of the alien officers whispered, "They're not attacking." And it was true. The humans didn't fire. They didn't speak again. They just watched. The silent ships hovered around the powerless alien fleet like predators waiting for a signal. Then, one by one, the alien ships began to disappear again. They weren't destroyed, they were taken, pulled toward the massive human vessel and swallowed by its dark surface. The last thing the commander saw before his ship was pulled in was the reflection of Earth in the distance. Blue, calm and shining. After that day, the first contact fleet never returned. When the Council lost contact with the fleet, they first blamed technical errors. Then, when no signals came back, fear took over again. The Council tried to send more scout ships, but they too vanished. It became clear that humanity had drawn an invisible line around their territory, a border no one was allowed to cross. Whispers spread across the galaxy. Traders said that when you looked toward the human system with the right kind of telescope, you could see strange shadows moving between the stars. Huge ships larger than any ever built, patrolling silently. Others said that the humans had built machines that could bend light, making them invisible until they chose to appear. Some said they had technology that could control gravity, making enemy ships vanish without a trace. No one knew what was true, but everyone believed one thing: the humans were no longer just another species. They were something else now, something greater, something untouchable. Months later, a strange signal appeared in the Council's main communication network. It wasn't from any known source. It had no coordinates. It simply appeared, played for 1 minute, and disappeared again. The message said only this: "Stay out of human space. We will not warn again." After that, all exploration missions near Earth stopped. The Council closed all travel routes to human space. Entire regions of the galaxy were marked as restricted. Yet even with all that fear, curiosity never truly died. Every few years, some brave or foolish crew would try to enter human territory. None of them ever came back. The galaxy began to change after that. Many species who once mocked humanity started to build new defenses. They changed the way they trained their soldiers. They began to study human history, trying to understand how such a small world had become so dangerous. They found records of Earth's past, wars, revolutions, endless struggles. But they also found something else, unity in chaos. Humanity had always fought, but they had also always rebuilt. Every fall had made them stronger. Every wound had made them harder to defeat. The Council realized too late that they had misjudged humanity. They had thought Earth was weak because it was small, but strength was never about size. It was about the will to survive. The humans had not become monsters. They had simply remembered who they were. From that day forward, no one in the galaxy ever said Earth's name lightly. And when someone asked what had happened to the first contact fleet, the answer was always the same. They found humanity. And that was enough to silence any further questions. For the first time in galactic history, peace was kept not through treaties or laws, but through fear. Fear of the species that had once called themselves human. After the first contact fleet disappeared, the galaxy fell into complete silence. The Council didn't make any public statement for weeks. They didn't even confirm what had happened, but people knew. You could feel it in the way the news channels suddenly stopped talking about Earth. You could see it in the way ambassadors avoided eye contact when the word human was mentioned. Everyone knew something terrible had happened. No one wanted to believe that the humans had destroyed the entire fleet again. But there were no survivors, no recordings, no escape pods, and no signals left behind. The Council's best fleets had vanished twice. No empire, no power, no species had ever done that before. The truth was impossible to hide. Slowly, rumors began to spread. They said the humans had built a weapon that could erase entire ships without a single explosion. Some claimed they had found a way to bend light itself, to make whole fleets disappear into another dimension. Others whispered that maybe the humans weren't just defending themselves anymore. Maybe they were building something even larger, something that could destroy entire star systems. The galaxy grew restless. Every colony, every trading post, every government was filled with fear. Captains refused to fly near human space. Soldiers began to question orders. Even the Council's generals started doubting their own power. Meetings were held every day in the grand chambers of the Council. The leaders of the galaxy's oldest empires argued endlessly. Some shouted for peace, saying they should open communication with Earth before things got worse. Others demanded revenge, calling humanity a threat that had to be erased before it grew stronger. But no one truly wanted to fight them again. Deep down, they all remembered the silence, the way the human ships moved without sound, the way fleets vanished without warning, the way the humans spoke only once, and that one message echoed in every corner of the galaxy. Congratulations. You just declared war on the galaxy's most lethal species. No one wanted to hear that message again. Still, pride can be louder than fear. The Council refused to accept defeat. To admit they had lost meant losing their control over the rest of the galaxy, so they lied. They said the fleet hadn't been destroyed, only delayed. They told the public that the humans were negotiating peace. They promised that order would soon return. But the galaxy didn't believe it. Weeks later, strange things began happening. Council outposts along the outer rim started going dark. Ships that traveled near those regions vanished without a trace. The few distress calls that did get through spoke of sudden flashes of light, then silence. When the Council sent investigation teams, they found nothing. No wreckage, no damage, just empty space. One report mentioned finding something unusual. A small metallic plate floating in space. It was smooth, cold, and engraved with words in galactic standard. We told you to stay away. The Council tried to keep it secret, but the information spread quickly. The whole galaxy knew now that humanity was watching them, silently, constantly. The fear that followed was different this time. It wasn't loud or chaotic. It was quiet, slow, and heavy. The kind of fear that didn't let you sleep at night. For the first time, the Council realized they weren't in control anymore. The humans didn't attack openly, but they didn't need to. The entire galaxy began to change its behavior because of them. Trade routes shifted away from Earth's borders. Armies began focusing on defense rather than expansion. People started saying, "Don't go near the dark side of the stars." Even children in distant colonies had started to whisper stories about the humans who live in silence. Months passed. And still, there was no direct communication from Earth. But in that time, something began to shift within the Council itself. Not everyone agreed on what to do next. Some members wanted to surrender, to send a message begging for peace before humanity struck again. Others wanted to prepare for the worst, to build new weapons capable of matching human power. But there was a third group, smaller, quieter, and far more dangerous. They didn't want peace or defense. They wanted to erase every trace of humanity before the galaxy fell completely under their shadow. They started planning in secret. They gathered spies, engineers, and old warships from forgotten fleets. Their plan was desperate: to launch a surprise attack on Earth using hidden routes through hyperspace before the humans could react. When the Council discovered what they were doing, it was already too late. The secret faction had already left. A small but powerful strike force made up of the most advanced ships ever built was on its way to Earth. But as history had already shown, you don't surprise humanity. Before those ships even reached the solar system, they were found. Not by satellites, not by scanners, by human ships, silent, fast, and waiting exactly where they needed to be. The alien ships tried to retreat, but every escape route was already blocked. The humans had predicted everything: the path, the time, even the exact moment of arrival. The battle was over before it began. The alien ships were dismantled, their weapons disabled with invisible precision. And this time, the humans didn't stay silent. They sent a message to the Council directly. "We do not seek war," the message said, "but if you bring war to us, we will end it." No one ever saw the ships or crews of that secret faction again. The Council tried to hide the incident, but there was no point. The galaxy already knew the truth. Humanity wasn't just strong, they were untouchable. Every attempt to harm them ended in failure. Every threat turned into silence, and yet the humans didn't conquer. They didn't send armies to occupy planets or destroy colonies. They didn't demand tribute or power. They simply stayed behind their invisible border, watching, waiting. That made them even more terrifying, because the galaxy couldn't understand them. Every other species, when given power, used it to dominate others. But humans didn't. They had power greater than anyone, yet they used it only to protect themselves. Some believed it was mercy. Others thought it was strategy. But no one really knew what humanity wanted anymore. A few brave travelers tried to enter human space to deliver messages of peace. Some of them were allowed to return. They spoke of strange things, of giant structures orbiting Earth, glowing softly like artificial suns. They described silent fleets patrolling the edges of space, their ships moving with calm precision. They said Earth looked peaceful: clean skies, green lands, oceans full of life. But above it all, thousands of silent ships hovered like guardians. And in that quiet beauty, they said, there was something heavy, a feeling that reminded you not to take another step forward. Those who returned said that humanity had become something beyond fear. They were balance. They were warning. They were the reminder of what happens when arrogance meets patience. The Council finally understood the truth too late. This war should never have happened. Humanity had only wanted to live freely, without control or interference. If the Council had simply left them alone, none of this would have taken place. But pride had started a fire that no one could extinguish, and now the galaxy lived under a new kind of silence, one that was not ruled by governments or armies, but by the quiet understanding that there was a limit to how far power could go. No one declared another war. No one dared to cross into human space again. The Council's fleets stayed close to their home worlds, their soldiers trained for defense, not conquest. And somewhere, far beyond their reach, the humans continued to build, to grow, and to watch. The war that should never have been became a lesson written not in fire, but in silence. Because humanity didn't win by destroying the galaxy. They won by making it understand. Years passed. The galaxy had grown quiet. No wars, no border fights, no daring fleets crossing into forbidden space. The silence around Earth became almost sacred, like a wound the universe didn't dare to touch again. But silence never lasts forever. Curiosity always finds a way. Far away from Earth, on the edges of Council territory, a group of explorers found something strange, a derelict station floating in the dark between galaxies. It wasn't marked on any map. No one knew who built it. Its surface was old, covered in frozen dust, but the structure looked human. At first, the explorers thought it was impossible. Humanity had never built colonies this far. But when they approached, scanners detected something that made everyone on board stop breathing for a moment. The station was sending out a signal, a repeating message in an ancient human dialect. No one could understand it fully, but one word kept echoing through the static: home. The news reached the Council fast. Even though they had avoided mentioning Earth for years, curiosity was stronger than fear this time. They decided to secretly investigate. If this old station truly was human-made, then it meant one thing: humanity had traveled the stars long before the Council even existed. That idea terrified them. A small, cautious research team was sent. No warships, no heavy weapons, just scientists, historians, and a few guards. They approached the silent station carefully, expecting traps or warnings, but nothing happened. The structure let them dock without resistance. Inside, everything was still and cold. There was no power, no life, just long halls made of metal and glass filled with dust and silence. The deeper they went, the more they realized that the station wasn't empty. It was full of symbols, writings, and holographic panels showing planets, stars, and strange blueprints. One of the historians noticed something incredible. The maps didn't show the galaxy as it was now. The positions of the stars were different, older. That meant this station was ancient, at least 10,000 years old, maybe even more. And yet, it was human. Then in the deepest chamber, they found something even stranger. A single glowing console still active after all that time. It displayed a recording waiting for someone to play it. When they did, a voice filled the air. It was calm, warm, and undeniably human. To whoever finds this, we were here before you. The team stood frozen. The voice continued. We built this station when your ancestors still looked at the stars with wonder. We left because we had to. We saw what the galaxy would become. Greed, fear, endless war. So we chose silence. The recording flickered for a moment, then resumed. If you are not of Earth, remember this. Humanity did not vanish. We waited. We always wait. Because every time the stars forget who we are, we return. Then the message ended, leaving only a faint hum in the dark. No one spoke for several minutes. They all felt the same thing. The quiet realization that humanity wasn't just strong. They were old, much older than anyone had ever guessed. When the team returned and delivered their findings, the Council was shaken to its core. Every history book, every recorded timeline was suddenly meaningless. The galaxy had always believed it was the center of civilization, that all great powers had risen from its empires. But now it seemed that humans had been there long before any of them, quietly watching, maybe even guiding from the shadows. And that changed everything. Some leaders began to panic. If humanity had survived for thousands of years, then maybe this wasn't their first war with the galaxy. Maybe they had fought before, destroyed civilizations, and simply erased their traces. Others thought differently. They believed humanity wasn't evil or violent, just cautious. Maybe they had seen too much war and pain in the past, and that's why they built their walls of silence. Maybe they feared repeating the same mistakes. But no one truly knew. Soon, the rumor of the ancient station spread across the galaxy. It wasn't supposed to. The Council tried to keep it secret. But information travels faster than light when people are afraid. Stories began to spread again. Some said humans were the first spacefaring species, the ones who created the first faster-than-light drives. Others claimed that they had once ruled the entire galaxy before erasing their own empire to prevent its corruption. Whatever the truth was, the effect was the same. The legend of humanity grew even larger. Meanwhile, deep inside human space, Earth's fleets began moving again, slowly, quietly. Observers from distant stars saw strange lights forming new patterns across the border. It looked like they were building something vast, a network of colossal rings and stations stretching from one system to another. The galaxy feared it was a new weapon, but those who dared to watch closely realized it wasn't built for war. It looked more like a defense net, or maybe something older, something that reminded ancient species of old myths about the gates of origin. The truth was that humanity wasn't preparing for another war. They were preparing for something far greater, something coming from beyond even their reach. But the Council didn't know that. They still saw humans as the enemy. Driven by fear, they gathered again. Endless meetings filled the halls. Debates turned into shouting matches. Every empire wanted answers. Every leader wanted control. Some said they should apologize, send envoys, and finally make peace. Others demanded they strike before humanity became unstoppable. But one thing united them all: the feeling that time was running out. Across the galaxy, strange signals began appearing, not from human space but from beyond it. The signals didn't match any known frequency, any known life form. They were deep, rhythmic pulses that felt almost alive. For the first time, humanity wasn't the only mystery. Some believed that these signals were what the humans were preparing for. That maybe humanity had known all along that something else existed, something dangerous, something older than them. And if that was true, then humanity wasn't just defending Earth. They were defending the entire galaxy. The Council didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. A few months later, another message arrived. Not from Earth directly, but through an encoded frequency that no one could trace. It was short, just a few words: stay where you are. What comes next is not for you. After that, the border around human space shimmered with light. Thousands of massive ships emerged, not in anger but in formation, like they were preparing for something massive and unseen. The galaxy held its breath. No one dared to move a single fleet. Historians would later write that this moment was the closest thing to peace the galaxy ever experienced. Millions of species, all watching silently, united by fear and curiosity. Then, for the first time in generations, the humans spoke again. Their message echoed across every channel, every system, in a calm voice that carried the weight of ages. We did not seek war. We never have. But you woke us up too soon. There are things older than us that are now stirring. We will face them. You must not interfere. The message ended there. No threats, no promises, just truth. And for the first time, the galaxy began to understand. Humanity wasn't the monster. They were the wall standing between the galaxy and something far worse. The silence that followed wasn't fear anymore. It was respect. Even the Council, broken and divided, bowed its pride. They stopped sending scouts, stopped monitoring the border. For once, they let Earth be. The galaxy waited and watched as the humans vanished again into their deep, cold silence, not as an enemy, but as the unknown guardians who had been there long before anyone else. They were no longer called the most lethal species. They were now something far greater, the first, defenders. And somewhere beyond the stars, in that quiet blue world that had once been ignored, the humans prepared for whatever was coming. They didn't do it for revenge. They didn't do it for glory. They did it because that's what they had always done. Protect life even when life didn't understand them. That was the truth the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity didn't need to conquer the stars. They only needed to remind the stars who they were. The galaxy had fallen silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with waiting. Everyone, from the smallest outpost to the grandest empire, knew something was about to happen. Every telescope, every scanner, every listening device was pointed toward human space. The stars there had begun to glow differently, faint lights moving in strange patterns, forming circles and spirals no one could explain. Some said it was art. Others said it was a warning. The Council called it the quiet storm. No one had heard from Earth for years. Not a single message, not even a whisper. But everyone remembered the last words the humans sent. Stay where you are. What comes next is not for you. At first, people thought it was just another human threat, but deep down they knew it wasn't. The tone had been calm, almost protective. It didn't sound like a warning to enemies. It sounded like a message from guardians. And soon, the galaxy found out why. It started with a sound. A low, deep vibration that passed through space itself. Not a signal, not a weapon, just a rhythm like a heartbeat from the edge of the universe. Then came the lights, far beyond human space. Near the edge of the galactic rim, stars began flickering one by one, as if something huge was blocking their light. When the council sent probes to investigate, every single one vanished. The readings before they disappeared showed something unbelievable. A shadow larger than any planet, moving slowly toward the galaxy. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't an army. It was something alive. The council panicked. Some called for evacuation. Some wanted to attack whatever it was. But there was nothing they could do. It was too far, too massive, and moving straight toward them. Then, for the first time in months, Earth spoke again. The message was short, clear, and terrifying in its calmness. Do not interfere. We have been preparing for this. Across the galaxy, human fleets began to move. Not just a few, but thousands of ships, emerging from behind their silent border like shadows coming to life. They didn't broadcast their signals or show their weapons. They simply formed a wall between the galaxy and the darkness approaching from beyond. Every species watched in awe. Even those who had once called humans monsters now sat quietly, knowing they were about to see something no living being had ever seen before. Then the stars at the edge of space began to die. One after another, their light faded, swallowed by the massive shape that entered the galaxy. No one knew what it was. It didn't match any known life form or energy pattern. It was older, colder, something from a time before history. And it was hungry. As it moved closer, ships from the council tried to scan it again. But the data they got back made no sense. The creature, or whatever it was, seemed to exist in more than one place at once. It wasn't just entering the galaxy. It was already everywhere. The galaxy trembled, but humanity didn't. The human fleet stood silent in formation, facing the darkness. Their ships glowed faintly like stars refusing to go out. And then, without a sound, they moved forward. Every scanner, every eye in the galaxy watched as the humans met the shadow head-on. No one knew what weapons they used or if they even fired any. All that could be seen were waves of light, rippling, bending, folding the stars themselves. Then came a flash so bright it blinded half the galaxy's sensors. And after that, nothing. Silence. For days, no one knew what had happened. The darkness at the edge of space was gone. The human fleets were gone too. Every trace of them vanished. The council tried to reach Earth, but there was no response. The border that once glowed with light was now quiet and empty. Weeks passed. Then months. Some said the humans had won but paid the price. Others whispered they had followed the creature beyond the edge of the universe to make sure it would never return. A few believed they were still out there, invisible, watching over the galaxy from the shadows, just as they had always done. And then one day, without warning, a single transmission appeared across every known communication network. It wasn't from the council. It wasn't from any known system. It was from Earth. The message was simple. Just 2 sentences. The threat has passed. You are safe now. Do not look for us. Then the signal vanished, leaving behind only silence once more. For the first time, the galaxy understood what the humans had truly been. They weren't conquerors or destroyers. They were the Watchers, the first and final line of defense against what lay beyond. Over time, stories replaced fear. Children grew up hearing tales of the humans who had once saved the galaxy. Monuments were built on distant worlds. Silent stones carved with the words, "They fought in silence so we could live in peace." Generations later, no one had ever seen a human again. Their homeworld remained hidden, covered by a shimmering field of light that no ship could pass. Some believed they had gone extinct. Others thought they had evolved beyond the physical world itself. But sometimes, explorers traveling near the edge of human space would report strange things. A flicker of movement among the stars, a shadow that looked like a ship, a voice on the radio whispering in a language no one spoke anymore. And every time that happened, the old saying returned across the galaxy, "Do not wake the humans." It wasn't a threat anymore. It was respect, because every species knew, if another darkness ever came, if something tried to consume the galaxy again, the humans would return. They always did, and maybe that's why, even after centuries, the people of the galaxy still looked toward the small blue star at the edge of the sky and whispered thanks to a species they could no longer see. Earth became a legend, a ghost world, glowing quietly under the watch of its unseen protectors, but those who truly listened knew that the legend was real. Sometimes, Late at night, when space was quiet and still, sensors picked up faint signals drifting through the void. Simple patterns, old human codes. Not a message of war or warning, just a single repeating phrase that seemed to echo from beyond time itself. We are still here. The galaxy never forgot those words. And even though no one had seen a human in centuries, every world knew that the silence beyond the stars was not empty. It was watched. Watched by the same hands that once built fleets beyond imagination. Watched by the same hearts that once stood against the unknown. The humans had become more than a species. They had become a promise that if the stars ever trembled again, if the darkness ever returned, the galaxy would not face it alone, because somewhere out there, beyond the reach of scanners and beyond the edge of fear, humanity still waited, silent, patient, watching, and that was enough to keep the galaxy at peace.